Hi, I'm Gigi, an ex-Amazon bar raiser here at Day One Careers. This video is one of a series that we're putting together so you can hear from current Amazonians about their journey to Amazon and their interview experience. Obviously, this channel is packed with our advice and best practices, but as I've explained many times, the Amazon interview process isn't completely homogeneous. People have varied experiences and approaches. So, we've been talking to current Amazonians to get their stories. Now, just one thing I will say is that some of the strategies deployed by the people that I interviewed wouldn't necessarily be strategies that we'd advise, but it worked for them. So I'm sharing them with you and you can draw your own conclusions. I hope you enjoy meeting them as much as I did.
Hey, Giovanni, how are you doing?
Hi, Gail. I'm very well. Thank you. Yourself?
I'm good, thank you. By the way, you can call me Gigi. I should have said that before we introed. So yeah, it's Gigi. Right. So everyone, this is Giovanni. Giovanni is an ops program manager, and he has very kindly offered to share his story with us. So we're just going to have a little bit of a chat. We don't know each other. Giovanni answered a call that I made in LinkedIn for Amazonians to come and guest be interviewed and kind of tell their story to you all. So this will be all new news to me as well. So this is quite exciting. So Giovanni, let's just start with, could you just give us a brief intro into your role at Amazon?
Sure. So thank you for the very welcoming introduction. And as you mentioned, my name is Giovanni. I am a senior program manager in the Global Mile operations team based in London, in LHR 16, which is the corporate headquarters. And I joined the team in April 2022, so just coming off my first quarter, so around three months ago. And I am responsible for the DPMO for the EU exports, so everything that gets ordered on EU marketplaces and then gets exported to other countries around the world. We ship to 177 countries, and I'm responsible for the DPMO, which is defect per million opportunity. So basically the quality of our delivery service to our customer, as well as the scan utilizations from the carrier that we use to make sure that we've got full traceability of the package flow during the process.
Wow, it's important work, right? Yes. It's like the backbone of Amazon to make sure that people get their packages delivered on time and with a high standard. So it's kind of backbone type stuff. So cool. Well, in which case then, why don't you tell me a little bit about your history and kind of how you found your way towards Amazon?
Absolutely. So I'm 28, so I've got a work experience of roughly 5 years coming this September. And I 28. Started,
I remember 28 was a very long time ago for me.
And I've started in Rolls-Royce, actually. So I finished my master in the University of Leeds, and then I joined Rolls-Royce as a graduate engineer. And then after the graduate scheme, I moved around a few different departments. So I spent 16 months as a manufacturing project lead, working into the civil aerospace manufacturing continuous improvement department for Rolls-Royce. And then I was promoted to management level as a production manager in operations. And I did that for 1 year roughly. Then COVID happened, and I decided that I wanted to progress my career in operation and in a company that was thriving in the operation space. And Amazon was the obvious choice. So I decided to apply for the area manager role. And last February, I was successful as an L5 dock area manager in the LBA2 fulfillment center, which is near Doncaster. After roughly 6 months, I actually got promoted as an L6 ops manager in LBA2. And then I supported the launch of a new department in my fulfillment center, which was a really interesting project because it was a full launch. It was a big project. It was around £11 million investment into fulfillment center, which was also a traditional, sortable fulfillment center. So not one of the new AR robotics, all new flashy, but more of a traditional legacy one. So it was nice to see this kind of investment. And I delivered the peak as an operations manager in reverse logistics, which was the department that I supported the launch. And then
sorry, just so that everyone understands, what's reverse logistics?
Yes, sorry, as built by stewards, the process and everything. So reverse logistics is the process that deals with the customer returns. So when customer order things and products on Amazon and then they return it, if they are still in sellable condition, we process through the reverse logistics process and we put them back in stock or inventory, or if they're not sellable at full price, we put them through the Amazon warehouse department where they get discounted and people can buy them off the Amazon website at discounted price based on their condition.
Cool. So you were really looking for kind of an operations kind of skills area to develop in.
Yes, and I think roughly it was 14 months after I wanted to kind of expand my scope and look at more of a strategic role where I had multiple stakeholders involved rather than just my team of area managers to deal with and look at the overall supply chain and the EU Exports Global Mile Operation Network role was the perfect choice for me. So when I managed to found it, I went through the internal interview process in April. Well, actually, the interview process started early January, and then I was transferred across in April.
Amazing. So we're going to talk about your first interview process for kind of area manager in a minute. But you mentioned a very, what would seem to me to be a quite quick promotion timeline between arriving as an L5 and then getting to an L6. So although this, I guess my series is basically about getting into Amazon, nonetheless, lots of people enter as area managers looking to kind of develop their career on. So before we go back to the very beginning, talk to me about kind of how you approached. You were obviously really ambitious. So talk to me about how you approached when you kind of arrived as an L5 area manager and knew you wanted to, develop your career on and move up. How did you kind of manage that first period to get yourself on track for a promo?
Yes,
I threw this question at you. We hadn't prepared for this, but
it's all right. It's not a problem.
I was curious.
So when you first join Amazon, specifically as an area manager, you are put through a very intense, I would say, training program. Before you even hit the floor, you've got when I first started, it was 15, but I think it varies between 15 and 12 weeks worth of online training and face-to-face training. So it originally was face-to-face, and then during COVID they all transitioned online, but I know they've restarted some face-to-face training right now for area managers that actually can then try the process themselves before even hitting their own home process. So that really helps understanding the process, the way the different fulfillment center process are working, and they are related one to each other. And you get very accustomed with all the tools that you need during your shift as an area manager, even before you lead your first shift. So this is really helpful because it's very intense training. You get a lot of specialists that are there to answer your questions, and it really helps clarify any doubts on all the Amazon tools that you might have during your training. So when you actually hit the floor, you are already up and running. So this was a really good advantage. So I think I had around 3 months worth of training, and then when I arrived into the fulfillment center, I had an overlap of 2 weeks, which was something that is very rare in Amazon, with the person that I was going to replace. So that really helped me in understanding, first of all, the team dynamics and what were the main challenges that this fulfillment center and my area specifically were facing. And after that, I was very proactive. I was really, really fascinated by the fast-paced environment that I was in, and the amount of volume that we were moving on a daily basis. And I was really fascinated and very proactive myself to identify projects that could improve the process and make it even more productive as well as safe for the people that we were working with. So that really helped me positioning for what we call a step up. So when you first join as an L5, it's very rare that you go straight to an L6 promotion. You normally do like between 2 and 6 months period on a step up role. Which is you are performing the operations manager or the next level up, but you are still an L5. You're still an area manager, although you are basically working as an operations manager. You get assigned reports to yourself, so you stop managing associates and you start managing managers, and you have a first kind of impact with that because it's a completely different type of management. And basically, if you then deliver on the shift, deliver projects that are scalable at fulfillment center and even region level, that builds up your portfolio for then being ready for panel. So I joined in February. I think hit the floor around kind of late April, early May. And then in July, I was stepped up due to the fact that there was a lot of movement, and there was actually a fulfillment center that was launching near my area. So there was a lot of ops managers that were actually moving to the new fulfillment center. So that created a lot of opportunities. I was really lucky under that perspective. So I got stepped up in July, and I went for my panel in September after having launched the new department at LBA2, which was again a really good project, because when there's a launch, everything needs to be done from scratches. So I was in charge of leading the co-leading the launch with another operations manager and senior operations manager. I was then sent for 4 weeks training at another fulfillment center, developing my network and developing the overall skill set. And I was then also in charge of the recruitment of the new area manager and setting up all the processes and keeping good relationship with our sister site that was where the volume was transitioning from. So that really helped kind of gathering that pool of examples, as we call in Amazon, that then really makes a difference at the panel. And I went for my panel around late September. And I think 2 weeks after, I was told that I was successful. So around mid-October, I started as a proper operations manager and delivered my first peak as an operations manager, which was an interesting challenge.
That's a brilliant story. And I think it's kind of testimony to people who often ask us about promotion, and once you get in at an area manager level, realistically, what can you hope for in terms of career progression? So it's a brilliant example. It's a pretty fast kind of movement.
It is, yes.
You were lucky, but I'm sure also luck doesn't just happen, right? You, to a degree, make your own luck. So you were clearly identified as someone who was going to be able to, move the new launch forward, etc. So well done, congratulations.
Thank you.
So why don't we then head all the way back to Rolls-Royce when you were thinking about, okay, I want to move on. I want to target a big scale operations company. And you decided that Amazon was where you were going to head towards. Can you talk to me about how you went about preparing for interview? Most of the people who are watching this channel right now are in the middle of their interview process. It's not an easy one. It takes lots of work, or we wouldn't have so many people at this channel. So they would love to know kind of how you went about your interview preparation. So just take us through it step by step.
Yes. So when I first started looking for what was my next step in my career, as I said, I was very clear in what I wanted to do, which I think definitely helped me identifying Amazon as my top choice. Once that was established, I decided to start looking into the company culture and how I could fit into Amazon. And this was my first input with what are the leadership principles. And also it became really clear to me how important the leadership principles are in Amazon. And I as I was going through the process of interviewing, the first interview was with the HR, and I was told to prepare on the leadership principle, and I was given 2 weeks to prepare on some leadership principle. I didn't know which ones. Okay. And so what I was going to say,
what resources did you use? Because obviously there's this channel, there's bazillions of others.
So what I used initially was looking on the internet and finding like resources about the leadership principle.
So you used the web and lots of resources on the web.
And then I decided also to engage with few people that made the transition to Amazon recently. So by using LinkedIn, it was really easy to find people that made the transition to operations manager or area manager recently, and they could give some insight into what the process for them actually was. And that was also the first time they actually realized I was going to have a bar raiser during my interview, which I didn't really know what a bar raiser was. So at that point, I started preparing, of course, by using the internet on all the different kind of questions that each leadership principle could encompass, as well as researching what the actual role for a bar raiser was. I really made a plan for the Amazon loop. So for people that don't know how the Amazon process works, you have an HR interview, an hiring manager interview, and then if you pass both, you go to a full loop, which is 4 people back to back. For level 4 and 5s. For level 6, I think it's 6 people total spread in 2 different days, so 3 and 3 back to back. So
just to jump in there, there's a little bit more diversity than that. Okay. I think that might be the case for ops. It's a bit different when you move outside of ops. But you're right. Yeah, you'll have, depending on what level, between 4 and possibly up to 8, depending on what level you're at. And you can either have it all in one day or spread across. But everyone has slightly different experiences. Sorry, before I'm going to interrupt you because I want to go back to the point that you made about reaching out to people on LinkedIn.
Yes.
Because that's smart and brave and not particularly common. I talk to and work with a lot of candidates, as you would imagine, and there's not many of them that tell me that they've reached out to people on LinkedIn. So can we just talk a little bit about that? I'd love to know kind of, did you just cold message these people? Were they willing to talk to you? How did that work?
I was very lucky. I had a colleague in Rolls-Royce that made the switch, I think 3 months prior to me. Not in operations though, in a process engineering role, so something completely different. But that definitely helped me understanding that. Then I really look for Amazon operations manager on LinkedIn. I filter for posts, and the amount of people that were actually joining as operations manager in February 2021 was just like crazy. Like the amount of people that were making the switch, I think that was the peak of the pandemic when Amazon was heavily scaling up and recruiting for area managers and operations managers. And so it was incredible. Like the pool of people that I could see moving to Amazon in operations was incredible. So I decided to literally just message, I think I messaged like 5-6 people with the hope of getting at least 1 or 2 responses back. And for my surprise, I got like actually probably 3 or 4 responses back. And all of these really helped me because apart from understanding the insides of the process, which then kind of put me in a different mood when I was approaching the process, because I already knew how it could have been. It really helped, and this is a bit sneaky trick that I recommend to everyone to do. If you connect with someone that is working for Amazon, they can see whether a person is a bar raiser or not internally. So once you know who is on your panel, you can really check out who's your bar raiser if you've got someone on the inside that can help you.
I feel we're going to have an interesting conversation about bar raisers because, as you know, I was a bar raiser and there's a whole bunch of mythology out there that makes me slightly uncomfortable about bar raisers. So you obviously want to get into that subject. So talk to me about how you said you had a plan for your loop. So tell me about your plan for your loop.
So by talking to different people, what comes out is that on your loop, there's normally a bar raiser, which is a person that is completely unrelated to the area that you're going to work with. So it's an independent person that sits on the panel and hire and act as a mediation person in between the hiring manager and the rest of the loop. Then the other people on the loop are normally, that's at least was my experience, very much focused on the area that you'll be joining. So for me in operations, there were 3 operations people. There was 2 operations manager, 1 senior operations manager, and then a bar raiser, which was a person coming from HR from me. I think it was a senior HR business partner. So my plan was, coming from external perspective, was to use my strongest example with the bar raiser. Like the example that I really believed were the one that I felt the more comfortable in going down in the nitty-gritty detail with the bar raiser. And then kind of I had the 3 tiers of example. So tier 1, the one that I selected for the bar raiser, and tier 2 were the one that I selected for the hiring manager, who I believed was the hiring manager looking at the job description. And then the tier 3, which were example that I felt comfortable with, but maybe they didn't have the greatest amount of details and data if further deep diving questions were asked that were reserved for the other people. So that helped me having a kind of a mental structure and really like jumping from answer to answer depending on who my interviewer was.
So how did you deal with the fact that you may not actually get asked a question that fits the example that you had decided you were going to ask? Because, by the way, I get this question from candidates all the time, and I'm going to be totally honest with you. They say, shall I save my best examples for my bar raiser? And I say no. Right. Okay. So I'll be totally honest with you. And the reason why I say no is, number one, your bar raiser should be open-minded enough that they'll read everybody's data. Yes. And it's not just about their interview. Now, humans are humans and blah, blah, blah. But that's number one. Number 2 is, if you're not asked the right question by the person who you think you want to tell that story to, then you're a little bit stuffed because you haven't, it's not the right match. So I'm curious, did you get lucky and the answer that you prepared for actually happened to fit the question?
No, so I was planning to link it to what I was saying before. So having this plan helped me having a mental structure, which helped me more than everything, probably feeling comfortable during the interview process, which was probably the biggest differentiator between a successful and non-successful interview.
Totally.
But I was incredibly not lucky. And I actually thought, at the end of my interview, I really felt my bar raiser didn't ask me any challenging question, why a couple of people that I wasn't expecting asked me incredibly challenging question. So I will remember that forever, because my first question with my first interviewer was a question that was not on any of the question per leadership principle. It was something completely, it was a very open-ended question. There was, why? Can you please tell me about the time that you failed? Of course, I had an answer prepared for that, but I always find that question very difficult, because it's a question that is testing your ability to exactly describe a time that you actually failed and not potentially turn into a positive, because a lot of people tend to, I failed at this, but then the result was this. And you're not really answering the full question if you turn that into a positive. Well, what I learned from that was that they actually want to see a reflection piece. So what you actually, you failed, which is fair enough. How you react to the failure and what you learned. So I will remember that question forever. And I'll remember the interviewer as well. I think it's the only one in my panel that I actually remember the name, because it was such a shocking question. Like, well, if this is the beginning, then we are in for a wild ride, I said.
So do you know what? I'm really pleased you pointed this out, because this is another thing that is another myth that really bothers me. Is it's kind of twofold. Number one, the myth being that your bar raiser has some kind of special questions and has some kind of special approach to interviewing you. It's just not true. There are no special questions that bar raisers get given. There's no special leadership principles, and your bar raiser interview is going to be exactly the same as your other interview. And then the second myth that you've just completely dispelled is that the bar raiser is going to be your toughest interviewer, because people assume you're a bar raiser because you are, the best interviewer there. And there are many, many people in Amazon who are amazing interviewers with so much experience. They've just chosen not to become bar raisers.
Yeah. So just to give you an idea of exactly what you just said. So after this was my first interview in Amazon, but then as I mentioned before, like within 7 months, I've gone through another panel for my level 6, which was probably 10 times more challenging than the one to come in. So just to also maybe explain what is a myth. Normally, at least this is for operations, when you get interviewed internally for a 5 to 6 or a 6 to 7 role, you don't have a bar raiser on the panel because you are inside Amazon, so you're already meeting the bar. That being said, you might have interviewers that are bar raisers. They are not just in the bar raiser. They're just not in the bar raiser shoes in that specific level. But as you said, the bar raiser is not going to ask you any specific questions. So that doesn't really matter whether someone is a bar raiser or not. Yeah. So during my panel internally, I had 2 bar raisers on my actual panel. And I said, you know what, this time I'm going to flip what I did when I was applying for Amazon the first time the other way around. So my strongest example were prepare for the people that were in operations, because I really wanted to show that I knew the subject and I deserved to be promoted to the next level. While the maybe intangible skills example, like a time there, I manage a team through a talent review or something like that. So skills that are intangible and they are soft skills, I reserved for who were the bar raiser outside of the loop of like the area of competency, if it makes sense.
But did that work out as well? Because again, you can't predict who's going to ask the question that fits the example. So did it work out for you that you were able to use the intangibles for the non-ops people and the ops ones for the ops peoples? Did that work out?
Well, it did work out with the HR, because I was expecting the HR to ask me a question about hire and develop the best and insist on the high standard potentially. And I got asked to hire, develop the best, but then I got asked to learn and be curious as well by the HR. So it worked out on insist on the high standard because I had the perfect answer for that. I really felt like it was really good, and it helped putting the interview with like the HR person on the right track and giving me the confidence that I was kind of performing at the right level. But as you mentioned, you don't know what question you're going to get asked for what people. The allocation of leadership principle is completely random, and it's completely random to the interviewer as well. So you don't really know. For me personally, having a mental structure helps more in be comfortable with the interview process. Like sitting there in front of a screen and say, right, I've got a structure. Yeah, I've done everything that I can to control what I can control. And now I don't have to worry about what I can't control because I don't know what's going to happen. So it helps under that specific point, if it makes sense.
And I guess maybe one of the skills that you have is not panicking. So I think one of the concerns that people might have is if they've prepared an example that they want to share with the bar raiser, but the bar raiser asks them a question that just doesn't fit that example, you have to be the type of person that doesn't panic and go, my God, this doesn't fit the thing I wanted to talk about. What am I going to do? Because that could completely kibosh you. But it sounds like you're quite comfortable with being able to
but that moment. Yeah, that's true. But that comes from a different thing that I learned during my time in Amazon. And that's why I recommend people to actually, they want to apply for Amazon roles, to reach out to people inside Amazon, because it's something that can actually come out and help. So when Amazon employs you, they are not looking for you to raise the bar. So they look for you to raise the bar at your current level, but they employ you for your potentials.
Yes.
Okay, Amazon does look at you. So if you are applying for level 5, when you get to the loop stage, the interviewers know that you are fit for a level 5. They want to see you raising the bar, but they are assessing your potential as an L6, as an L7. So
they're looking for long-term growth potential.
Correct.
That's are you raising the bar at the current level that you're interviewing for, and do you have long-term growth potential? Those are the two things that I was looking for as a bar raiser.
Exactly. So I always think maybe this is just my kind of approach to the interview, but I think, well, if I got to this stage, then I definitely can say my piece about the current level. What I really need to focus on, so I don't stress about that in a way. And what I really focus on is like showing that I've got the potential to grow in the company. So when I did my internal panel, and this is where like I learned during my time at Amazon, I wasn't concerned about meeting the bar as an L6 because I was doing that job as a step up. So if I had to do an internal panel to my FC for the step up as well. So if I wasn't meeting the bar as an L6, I wouldn't have got the step up in the first place. So I was very confident that I was meeting the bar as an L6. What I was really focused on showing like my potential as an L7 and an L8 going forward. That's what I was really focusing, and that's why I really believe like launching a new department that really helped with like showing L7/A potentials in a way. So I would say to everyone that is trying to get into Amazon, if you get to the loop, definitely showcase your skills that you can raise the bar at the current level, but don't forget to show your potentials, because a lot of people get like focused in showcasing they can raise the bar, but then Amazon is about scalability.
Lots of people are obviously trying to identify, of all 16 leadership principles that I potentially need to prepare for in my interview, that's not why I said ops, in my interview, where should I focus? Now, some people are lucky and their recruiter is kind enough to tell them, and it sounds like you got one of those. Some people are not lucky and their recruiter will not share that information with them. So it'd be great for people to understand from an operations point of view. Don't give me a full list, but what would you say based on your experience and your ability to get yourself an amazing promotion in a very short period of time are really the key leadership principles that drive a successful kind of area manager, operations manager?
Well, for me, they are for sure ownership is the very first one. It's also probably my favorite leadership principle. So I might be a bit biased towards it, but you really need to own your area as an area manager. If you are successful, you'll hear your operations manager say, own your areas, because it is really important. So definitely ownership is one. Deliver results as well. As an operations manager, you need to deliver results through your team. As an area manager, you need to deliver results in your area. So definitely those two in operations. Then I would definitely say earn trust and insist on the highest standard regardless of where you are. You need to earn the trust of your team, of your peers, of the external stakeholders, of your manager, and so on. And definitely insist on the highest standard constantly. It doesn't matter whatever you're doing, whether it's coding, whether it's operations, whether it's just managing a project, you really have to insist on the highest standard. And then that leads to what I believe is the last one, which is probably the favorite that everyone knows and everyone says, but it goes to customer obsession, because you need to think the customer and work backwards and try to insist on the standard to deliver the best service that you can to your customers. I think Andy Jassy said it. It was an interview when he first was appointed as a CEO, that he said that we're just not going to compromise on customer delivery and customer obsession. So it doesn't matter what's going on around it. Like keeping a very high bar on that is fundamental in Amazon.
Awesome. I'm a biased towards dive deep person myself. I know exactly what you mean.
There's a lot of them. Probably dive deeper would have been the next one that I said. But there's a lot. There's a lot. There's learning and develop the best is probably another one. There's a lot, and it very much depends on your role. Well,
exactly. But you mentioned that you have a bias towards ownership.
I do, yeah.
Every Amazonian, people don't believe you when they're on the outside when you say, I'm telling you, every Amazonian has a favorite leadership principle. And people are like, what? That's weird. And it's like, it's true. It's true.
Yeah, but I think they're also all interconnected. So
of course
for me, ownership means also owning the development of my team, which goes hand in hand with and develop the best. Do you know what I'm saying?
But at the same time, some of them are in conflict. I mean, I teach this to my candidates all the time. If you think about insist on the highest standards and bias for action, those two are at tension with each other. But that's the beauty of the leadership principles. That's why they're a whole, because some are complementary and some are at tension. And that's just the reality of running a business. That's, it's always going to be the way. Awesome. So I would love to ask you then, you did lots of prep before you did your interview. You spoke to Amazonians, which is brilliant. Is there anything that when you actually kind of arrived in the door, I mean, I bear in mind, I appreciate COVID was there and all sorts of weirdness. But was there anything that really surprised you when you got inside Amazon that you just hadn't anticipated or realized or understood when you were on the outside?
Two things, I would say. From a very operational perspective, looking at like a very like area manager or operations manager or like a program manager that deals with operation, is the sheer of volume that Amazon moves. Like people just don't realize it, and I didn't realize it before. But in my fulfillment center, which was a traditional sortable, so dealing with like a bulky item, we were moving roughly from an inbound, which is the department that receives all the goods in. We were moving roughly 30 to 40,000 items a shift. So you're talking like potentially like 60 to 70,000 items a day. Okay. So, and that is a non-sortable. So I know for a fact that when you go into robotics websites, they move roughly 1 million items a day. Some of them, like when you go in like books or like small items, they move 1 million items a day. So it's crazy. And the second one is probably the culture. When you do the interview process, that is the first impact that you've got with the leadership principle, and you think it's a screening mechanism, but it's actually the core of the culture inside Amazon. You get to live and breathe the leadership principle and apply them in everything that you do, which is really nice because it really makes you a leader. And I realized this, the 14 leadership principle, the 16 now, but out of 14, when I was preparing, 11 started with the word leaders, and it's not coincidence. And so Amazon really develops you as a leader, which is very nice to see inside Amazon. It's something I was really surprised.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I was talking to somebody the other day who was at Microsoft, I think it was. And they were saying to me, because they moved from Microsoft to Amazon, and they were saying like that when they were at Microsoft, they have their own values, of course. And they were saying that, I kind of thought that when I was at Microsoft, I was kind of living the values. And then I went to Amazon and I realized I was not living the values at Microsoft. I thought, no disrespect to Microsoft, but he was trying to just make the point that Amazon is just like a million miles kind of accelerant when it comes to embracing their leadership principles compared to kind of the average corporate, which I thought was an interesting observation. So before we wrap up then, and I'm so appreciative of your time, I have to say, I'm very, very grateful. I would like to ask you if you had just one piece of advice that you could give to candidates who are heading into their first ever interview with Amazon, or maybe their second, third, fourth, but they're external candidates heading into an interview with Amazon. If you could give them one piece of advice and one piece only, what would it be?
Practice. So I didn't mention it across the whole interview, but I practiced a lot. Practice your answer in front of a mirror, practice them with someone else, reach out to people on LinkedIn, ask them if they can do mock interviews for you, use the Day One Careers website, which I'm sure gives you a lot of that. But practice is what's going to make the difference. If you're comfortable with your answers, they might not be the perfect answer, but you're definitely going to show all your abilities and skills. That is what you're going to make the difference. So practice is the one piece of advice.
I'm so pleased you said that. I'm so pleased. Yeah, practice. And thank you for the plug. Yes, you're right. We actually have a Discord community in Day One Careers. We have like 2,000 members, and they all get together and have kind of buddy mock interviews with each other. So yeah, amazing. Great piece of advice. I love it. Right. So I guess with that, all that I have left to do is say, honestly, thank you so much for your time. I'm very grateful.
No problem.
And it sounds like you've had an amazing start to your journey at Amazon. And now we're connected on LinkedIn. I can watch you grow and develop. Absolutely. I'm sure it's onwards and upwards. Any ambitions to be a bar raiser?
I'm actually planning to apply. So I've done, I think in 1 year and 4 months that I've been in the company, I've done around 75 interviews.
That's a good number.
Yeah, so I did apply originally as a bar raiser when I first passed 12 months, because in order to be a bar raiser, you need to do 25 interviews and be 12 months in the company. So I think 12 months from one day, I've asked my bar raiser sponsor, which was my L7, to put me forward. I was initially rejected due to the writing style during my feedback, which was a great piece of feedback, because it served me very well, not just in terms of applying for the bar raiser role, but also in my new role, because as a program manager, we do a lot of writing.
Yeah.
And so it really helped me getting a bit of a reality check about the fact that I had to step up my game about writing. So I haven't reapplied as of yet, but I have discussed it with my current manager, just because I wanted to get settled in the new role, and then I'll reapply again. But I hope that is improved a lot.
You sound like the type of person who'd be a good bar raiser.
We'll see. But I'm really planning to, because I think it's a good experience, a good piece of development for myself.
It's the best thing I did when I was at Amazon. I loved it. Totally loved it. So yeah, if you can get there, I would super recommend it. So on that note, I'll say goodbye to you now. I'm not going to hit the end button. Sorry, everyone, you have to listen to this. I forgot to mention this to Giovanni at the beginning. I'm not going to press the end button and get rid of you, but I am going to say goodbye. Everyone else is going to get cut off and we'll stay chatting. But honestly, thank you so much for your time and your amazing experience. It's I'm sure people will get great value from it.
No problem. It was my pleasure. And as I said, if anyone wants to reach out to have an inside view, just feel free to.
Great. Are we okay to put your link to your LinkedIn profile in the? That's brilliant. We'll do that. Right. So don't all rush. Poor Giovanni will be completely swamped. And if you do message him and he doesn't get straight back to you, please don't take it as a personal insult. He will get back to you when he gets the chance. But that's really generous. Thank you very much. We'll put that in the details. Okay. I hope you enjoyed that, everybody. And Giovanni, I have a quick chat in a second.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Bye.
Now, what you need to do is click the link here to claim your free Day One Careers Customer Obsession Taster Course. Watch that and you'll nail every customer obsession question asked of you in your Amazon interview. Or if you want to do that a little bit later, why don't you check out more here of our incredible insights and advice on Amazon interview preparation.